Today we are talking about making bias tape. I have in front of me a striped fabric that I'm going to use to demo today. Particularly with stripes or a print, it will be easy to understand how I'm working with the bias in relation to one of my seam samples of muslin. So I have some striped fabric. You can definitely use muslin. This is really just for illustration and demo purposes. I also have my clear graph ruler. I am going to be using my rotary cutter today, and I have a mechanical pencil. So just for the demo of making bias tape, these are all the supplies that you will need. I'm working on my cutting mat now, which is kind of great because I am incidentally like creating a right angle kind of level with my piece of material. My piece is pressed as well, so it's ironed. I'm working with a seersucker, so it has a little bit of texture in it that you might be seeing, and that's just due to the weave. So to make bias tape, I've clearly identified my lengthwise grain. This is my selvage. It has both the perforated holes as well as that kind of frayed edge. The cross grain is here along the width. This is a cut edge because it is not muslin, so it's okay that I have a cut edge that I'm working from. What I am doing, I'm kind of squaring up, and you can do this with the corner of any table, my selvage with just a line on my cutting mat underneath. I'm going to create a right angle triangle from my piece of fabric to find the 45-degree angle on my fabric. So we've talked about the lengthwise grain being the strongest grain of the fabric, the cross grain being slightly weaker. It has more space in between the fibers, so it has a little bit more give. The bias is the most elastic part of the fabric. So when I stretch on the bias, it is really, really supple. It has tons of give. When we block our fabric, we are blocking on the bias, on that diagonal, and stretching the fibers back into place. There is the most amount of space in between the fibers on that diagonal axis. Okay, so we are going to use bias tape as a finish for our seam samples, but bias tape is a beautiful finish for any seams, necklines, armholes, edges of basically anything. It's an opportunity to use a contrast fabric like I will be to add a decorative element, or else it can be done in the same fabric as, you know, your garment, etc. But just offers a really nice way of finishing things as opposed to using a facing. So I'm going to go ahead and start making my bias tape. I said that I'm going to fold this corner up to create a right triangle. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm not going to make a ton of bias tape, so I'll stop right here. I'm just going to kind of finger press it down, create that fold line. I'm creating 2-inch wide strips today. So for my very first piece, I'm going to line up my ruler with just 1 inch, and I'll cut it because the first one will be on the fold. I don't want any snags, so I'm going to kind of go back over it and pull it as I trim away. Okay, so when I remove this piece, my stripes are now on a diagonal to the piece. Okay, this is what it should look like if you are working with striped fabric and you have like lengthwise or crosswise stripes. So this is my first piece. I'm going to go ahead and cut a few more. Actually, I did not need to move that. I'm going to line it back up. So with those edges touching, I'm cutting again 2-inch wide strips of bias. So I'm going to just level my ruler. So only the first strip was on the fold. The rest of them I'm cutting single. I actually did not trace my pencil line. I used the ruler the entire time. You are more than welcome to lay down your ruler, trace the line, remove the ruler, and then cut. Sometimes my hand slips when I'm using the ruler and I'll nick the side of it with the rotary. And then it makes it kind of tricky to measure with after that. So I definitely did just gamble, but it worked out. But just a word to the wise, like it's definitely sometimes smarter to just go ahead and make that pencil mark or work with any kind of chalk or wax. Okay, so I'm gonna stop right there. I have 3 pieces of bias to start with. My stripes are, they can all go in different directions, but we're going to line them up so that they are all the same. And I'm going to go ahead and start my next demo of creating bias tape by sewing these pieces together.